Sentry mode activated. Target acquired.
Hey there hunters, and welcome back to the Gunners Guild. Today we're going to be taking a closer look at the matchup that gunner weapons have with Ruiner Nergigante. Hopefully by the end of this you'll gain some insight as to how the fight actually works and what to expect. Now of course there's going to be kind of a lot of info here that's not exclusive to gunners, so I'm sure melee people will be able to take something away from this as well. But anyway, let's just get into it. So for the first choices of weapons, Raw is definitely going to be the way to go here. He does have some decent elemental hit zones, but tenderized spikes are a huge bonus for Raw, and that just scales so much better. So blast and raw bows are going to be kind of the go-to for this. For bowguns, honestly everything kind of works. Thanks to his spikes, Pierce can get a lot of nice juicy hit zones. Normals are just very comfy and can poke him from a safe range, and spread are just spread. Now obviously we're going to be using spread and pierce for the most part because they're stronger just based on the motion value itself. I wouldn't recommend elemental bowguns, at least for now, since the elemental zones are pretty low, but I'll check back when Safi comes out. Sticky is also unadvised because you literally just can't deal enough damage to get through the hunt with sticky ammo alone. Now the other side note is that earplugs is actually a really good armor skill for this fight if you can fit it in. I know bow can't, but bowguns can kind of get away with it, and I'm sure some melee weapons will be able to as well. Anyway, let's just get into the fight. To start, Ruiner's roars is exactly the same as regular Nergigante's. It's very easy roar to dodge because you can just watch his head and decide that the second you see his head jerk forward, that roar hitbox comes out and you just roll right there. It may take a few tries, but you'll get it down. This is probably one of the easiest roars in the games. His enraged roar is also the same, so you can see him pull a scared turtle here and then he just does the same thing, roll right through it. Now for the engagement, Ruiner always spawns with his right paw spiked and his left wing with black spikes. Make sure you're aware of these because it does influence how he behaves. So when you start the fight, you have two options. You can either start with the enraged tenderize, which most people do, and that's pretty much what I always do, or you can go right for the arm break. Totally up to you though. Not sure how melee wants to do the fight, but enrage is always very much welcome because you get that extra bonus in damage. But either way, you most likely want to get both of those done first. Ruiner still topples on the arm break, which is a threshold of about 620 now. This will topple Nergigante per his usual clumsy self and let you tenderize him or just beat down on his head. It's very beneficial to starting the fight this way, but you don't have to. Now when he gets up, if he had done at least 10% of his damage, somewhere around there, then he should do his first arm roar. If you've fought Ruiner, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Ruiner will let out a big roar and then raise up an arm, leap up, come back down, slam into the ground, and release a bunch of spikes. So let's break it down step by step. First, the roar. These roars are notoriously hard to dodge, but as he gets up on his hind legs, he will lift his head and arms up into the air, and that is the moment I dodge the roar. It's more of a visual cue, much less of an audio cue. The timing's kind of rough, and I do have to admit that most of my gunning sets do run evade window because it comes free with the free element decoration, which makes this roar so much easier to dodge, but you can definitely do it without. Just gotta get enough practice in. Anyway, regardless of getting the roar or not, you definitely have time to get away from the impact. You can tell which way he'll jump by the arm raised during the roar. However, Ruiner will always start with his right arm. I'm not sure if this is tied to him having his spikes also start on the right arm, but he will always do the right arm. That's the arm that you have to pay attention during this fight. The entire fight, that right arm is the most dangerous thing. So you can simply move to your right, which is his left, and will get away from him crashing down on you. Now a second after he comes down, he digs his arm in a little bit more to release the spike nova. Now you can use this as another visual cue because as soon as that arm digs into the ground, you can roll and will put you right through those spikes. The spikes come out in an almost perfect half circle radiating out from his center on the side that he raised his arm up. This includes forward, so don't try to get too close to the head when he does it. Otherwise, if you're on an opposite side of the jump, you're pretty much safe. Now after this part, it's kind of up to your DPS. If your DPS is bad, he will get in some of his usual Nergigante attacks, which haven't changed too much. He's got the jabs, which, if you hit him while he's jabbing, you can activate his counter slam, which is very easy to bait out and punish. He will always slam with the arm that he's jabbing with, so keep that in mind when you need to move. He's got horrible instant slams as well, and unless you're not actively doing stuff when his AI decides to do it, well, you're kind of shit out of luck. Otherwise, he picks a random arm and then brings the pain. It's up to you on the direction that you have to dodge, because again, it's kind of random. Now, if he knocks you on your butt with the jab or the slam, he will almost always follow up with his big wing press attack. He only does this as a follow-up attack, and he also only does this if he has black spikes on his left wing, and guess what? He starts with black spikes on his left wing, so yeah, thanks. Anyway, when he does this, you don't have very many options. You either run backwards to evade it, which will put you on his tail when he's done, or you iframe through it and the follow-up wing drag, which puts you on his face. You know, this attack is just fucking impossible to deal with. Neither scenario is ideal, because it's going to waste a bunch of time either way, but if you really wanted to live, I'd just roll backwards, and then you have to deal with the follow-up attacks, which are pretty bad. And then Nergigante also has his bulldozer. He fucking loves to do this bulldozer. He puts his head into the ground, drags it forward, and throws a huge amount of spikes forward that stretches out really far. The hitbox is deceptively large, so try to stay past his paws when he does it. Now, the last attack he often uses is the Big Slam. This attack, which always comes from his right arm, has a new twist at Ruiner. Thanks to the crystal spikes on his right arm, he now does a Spike Nova shortly after it slams down. This has the same properties as the arm roars, where he will dig in just a second before the Nova comes out, which gives you a nice visual cue for when you actually have to iframe through it in case you're on that side. So during this time, if you manage to take off at least 20% of his HP, he'll usually do what I call the Kapenga roar. This roar has a distinct sound, and he also shakes his head and raises both his arms. This is the one that's coming for you, directly on you, and it will track you. It's got a similar timing to dodge, but I feel this one comes out just a little bit faster, so it's a bit harder to dodge. Worry not, you can still dodge it if you miss the roar. Now when he jumps up and dives down, the moment you want to dodge is the second you see him start coming down. It's pretty fast. When he reaches the apex of his jump, just get ready. Now you have two options. You can either dodge backwards to dodge the initial slam and then dodge again to evade the volley of spikes that he throws afterwards. You have to spam dodge because it's basically frame perfect, but you can just do this twice really fast. Or you can simply dodge any side and it will evade them both. I prefer dodging to the side, especially with Heavy Bowgun, because, well, Heavy Bowgun's fat roll can't dodge backwards and then recover enough to dodge the head spikes as well. Special thing to note, he only does this once, so if you get away from it, you're in the clear. This also does break his head spikes if he has them up, so if you were trying to break them prior to him doing this roar, then it's going to go to waste. So if your DPS was not good after the first arm roar, he'll probably get in another arm roar before doing the Kapenga roar. Now the arm roars can only be done twice for each arm, and he always starts with the right arm, so keep track of all subsequent roars. They are random after the first, but if he does the right again, that's the two. It's done. You can expect the next two roars to be on the left side. So the first 20 to 25% of this run is pretty much the same if you're keeping up on your damage, but next is what's kind of random, and this is where things tend to go sour. So Nergigante has an enrage timer of 90 seconds, and if you start the fight with the enrage and tenderize, you can keep track of that hunt fairly well. After 90 seconds, he should get exhausted and get super tired and let you wail on him for a moment. Now when I'm doing light bowgun, I use this as the indicator for when to re-tenderize him, because it matches up perfectly. I could ignore the tenderizers and just pump in more damage into him, so then I could just claw and tenderize again when he's exhausted. This is going to put him back into enraged state and keep the head tenderized for another 90 seconds to line that up perfectly. Obviously you don't have to wait and do it this way. For some weapons I'm sure that's not really a smart idea, but it is a handy way to keep track of timing and tenderizing at the same time. For now though, the fight is just going to be a typical Nergigante shenanigans fight. He will do some of his attacks. The only really two bad ones here are the jabs and the instant slams because they're so damn quick. He will occasionally do the arm roar up to the point where he has done it twice for each arm, and now once he has both his arms complete, we enter Kapenga stage. He will now start doing zoomies a lot more often. His claw drags will become way more frequent. Don't ask me how to dodge this thing, it fucking tracks, it sucks. If you're close to him, you're just fucked. It ends my runs entirely. Just don't get hit or don't let him do it. And now when he does his slams, he's going to do both his arms and then crash them into the ground to do a Nova Spike on both sides. This is actually pretty nice for solo play because he typically looks at you when he does it, and the center is a nice open space, so you could just use that to get some free damage in. In group play, one player will be safe, everyone else is going to have to dodge. So make sure you keep an eye on his arms because like the other slams, he digs in a little deeper before the spikes come out, giving you a nice cue on when you have to dodge it. Now the rest of the fight though is going to be in his zoomy stage. And yeah, you can imagine, the longer he's in the stage, the harder the fight's going to be, because it only takes one trip up for him to ruin the hunt because, well, that's his name. That is pretty much the rest of the hunt though. So I do want to go over some notes and tips outside the general flow of this fight. First is the spike breaks. Outside the first arm, I really don't worry too much about breaking spikes anymore. The rest of the fight I like to focus on his head because that's obviously the nice juicy hit zone, especially when it's tenderized. However, the head has issues even pre-Iceborne, and now we just got more. When you're hitting the head, you can get a horn break, a stagger on the horn hit zone, get a spike break, get a stagger on the head zone, or get a clagger. Any of these besides the spike break will override the topple on spike break if they happen at the same time. And they happen at the same time all the time. So counting for head spike damage can still be done, but more often than not you're going to get something else besides the spike break topple. The other thing to note is that when he's doing any of his new arm roars or Kapenga roars, he is immune to status and staggers. So you cannot topple, you cannot KO, you cannot stagger, or anything until he's completely done with the animation. And while doing those animations, he can break his own spikes anyways, so I wouldn't worry too much about the spike breaks unless you're really trying to go for some perfect times here. Anyway though, that's basically the Ruiner fight for the most part. It's just the same old Nergigante with a couple added tricks to it. I hope you learned something that helps you fight him, and thank you all for watching, and good luck out there hunters, and whatever you may be hunting.